Hello, I'm Daniel Robertson, the Program Manager for the Boys and Men of Color Initiative at Say Yes Buffalo. This month, we've been talking every week about changing the narrative for young men of color in Buffalo. We've heard from Idris Wadri, the filmmaker Corey Green of the Blackness Project, and from my colleague and also my mentor, Tommy McClan at Say Yes Buffalo. Today, we actually want to focus on our up-and-coming generation of young people and ask them about how they plan to kind of shape the narrative going forward. Joining me today are two young men. The first is Dallas Taylor, who works here at the station. He's 25 years of age and coaches tennis and soccer, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, welcome to the show, Dallas. Glad to have you here today. Also, we have Malik Patterson, who is a part of our Breaking Barriers Youth Leadership Council. Welcome you again, Malik. I know you were on last week. We'd like to thank you, our Facebook audience, and invite you also to join in on the conversation. If you have a question or comment, please feel free to make sure that you share it with us, and we'll make sure that we get to it during our time today. So, Dallas and Malik, as I stated before, during this month, we've been going through these Facebook Live conversations, talking about what the narrative is for young men of color in Buffalo. And we heard from Idris, and we've heard from Corey, and Malik, I know you were on last week. We also heard from Tommy. Now we're going to kind of shift and hear from you guys a little more about what the narrative should be going forward and what are some of the things that we should kind of do. So, Malik, I want to start with you, if that's okay. All right.
Okay, that's fine.
So over the past couple of weeks, I know you've had the chance to actually see some of the Facebook Live conversations. You were a part of the conversation last week. What is what's your thought process on what you've heard so far?
Well, I didn't really get the chance to see any of the Facebook Live conversations. I only participated in the one last week with yourself and also Corey Green, the director of the Blackness Project. And I think that conversation was very beneficial and also meaningful and purposeful, because it kind of gave me a better understanding of like certain things that other men of color, go through or have to face on an everyday today situation, because I only know from my personal experiences and the people that I have spoken to and spoken with in my community. So it kind of just gave me a better understanding of that. And how deep these problems and these issues are, because these problems and these issues have been existing for hundreds of years. Not hundreds of years, but for a very long time. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, and it's kind of like we're still facing the same thing.
So let me stop you right there. Why do you think we're still, some of these issues that we're still encountering today, why do you think they still linger and exist?
Well, I think that they're still lingering and exist because this country, America, doesn't really want to be honest about what happened. They don't want to be honest. People in this country don't really want to be honest about racism, about how some people, particularly people of color, are disenfranchised and how we lack certain opportunities in this world, and we're being discriminated against for the simple fact that we look different from the dominant culture, the white culture, So, and then also it's like, I see the cycle in history it repeats itself over and over and over and over again. Because we don't want to acknowledge what happened, and because I feel like a lot of people in this country aren't necessarily ready to move forward, aren't really ready to, to move forward, to move past all of that, because there's still people in this country who are benefiting from, systematic racism.
Okay. Dallas, I want to bring you in here to the conversation. Actually, Dallas, I got a couple questions for you, because I know that I think you've seen some of the episodes, maybe not, but I know we were kind of talking off camera kind of before we started, and I think your view on what the narrative for boys and men of color is a little differently than what we kind of been discussing over the past couple of weeks. So I want to kind of get your take on, one, what do you feel the narrative is, and as a young male coming up in Buffalo, what's been your experience?
So my experience, I don't really, I do remember having my father present, but okay. I would say over the past couple of years, it has not been. But the narrative, I think, going around is that there are a lot of black kids who don't have their fathers around, which is not necessarily true, because there are fathers present, but there are also adult male figures, positive adult male figures in young men's lives that I think not so much as a father, but it's a father figure in a sense. And it doesn't have to be a father, but that person being there, give you the right direction, giving the right values, the right motivation to get through life, like you were saying, the systematic racism that we have in this country. But I also go back to what you were saying about why it's still probably existing and lingering, not just because of external factors, America and that kind of thing, but I also think it's us ourselves as Black men. We have to push past those barriers that are set forth towards us. And we have to act, like you said, actually talk about it. And I think what the language becomes so much of, it becomes code. But we speak so much in code that people don't actually recognize that it's code. So we keep on saying the same thing. Like you said, people don't want to acknowledge that happened, what happened. We want to actually get to the details, like slavery, how Black people were treated back in the past, that kind of thing we have to be honest about. Also be honest with ourselves. Like if someone says, oh, you're a Black man, you're going to be put at a disadvantage. I think that automatically closes that door. You can't tell someone they're going to be at a disadvantage, so no, don't try it. That's not going to work for you.
But it only closes that door if you believe it, if you buy into the hysteria and the negative perception that people out there have about about men of color in general, you know.
Right. So we still have to, even though it might not work for us, you still have to go for it. Like, I guess, for example, I find myself walking around random buildings that maybe I'm not supposed to be in, but you see the sign on the door that says this door is locked. So you automatically, all right, this door is not going to open because it's locked. If I go and open it, it may be open. You don't know. Even though there's a sign that says that's locked, don't go in here. There's a chance it might not be locked. You can still go in there and I can get out of this place before someone catches me. But that sort of idea of this door is locked, you can't go through here because of who you are. You can't let that set you back. So like I said, I coach youth over in downtown Buffalo at JFK Park, and I do come across a lot of young African American males, even different diversities. But I see an innocence in them. Like they're just so young, they're joyful, they don't really know what's out there. And not yet, right. But me being a coach, so we call ourselves coach mentors. Okay. So not only are we coaching them sports, but we're also teaching them life skills and being that positive adult figure that I mentioned before. And me being a Black man, I think it's important for me to be a positive Black male figure in some of these kids' lives. They may not have their biological. Right. Gotcha. They might not have their parents around, but me being a positive adult figure in their life, not me being a parent, but just me being there and helping them, give them the right direction is sort of where I see the narrative going for us. We have to be, us, the younger generation from the older generation, have to be that older generation for the younger generation, just like we were taught. We have to teach the younger generation.
So you said a lot.
Yeah.
And I got a bunch of questions that's going through my mind right now. So narrative, I feel like you take a very positive outlook in regards to what the narrative is for boys and men of color, which is definitely what we want to promote, because so much of what the narrative that exists around boys and men of color tends to be negative, right? And I like the approach that you're taking, but I can't ignore the fact that there are certain things that, even though we want to push through those doors, that won't allow us to. So how do you function as how do you continue to function and be positive when you know you work in a space and you exist in a world where a lot of doors may not open for you just based on the color of your skin?
I think it's about self-resolve and self-resiliency. So even though someone keeps telling you no, you have to keep believing that the yes is going to come. Okay. So I guess, like, for example, if you're working somewhere and they see the color of your skin, like, this isn't going to work for you. They don't really know you. It's like social media. If someone gives you an insult, some random person gives you an insult, you can't let that affect you. You can't let that hurt you, because that person doesn't know who you are. That person doesn't know what skills you have, what abilities you have, what capabilities you're capable of. You can't really let those things affect you negatively, because, like, again, that automatically, it sets you down and you automatically won't go through that door. You have to keep on pushing on.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because I never allowed the color of my skin to define who I am, because I think that ultimately we are defined by the way that we treat ourselves and the way that we treat other people. And so I believe that so strongly, and I believe that I had that belief in myself ever since I was little. When I was started to notice certain things that was happening in my community and why people who look like me were being arrested so often, and just like the way that the police would be so forceful with arresting them and speaking down on them and so on. But I do believe that it starts with you. You have to have that mindset that says, well, I understand that this is how the world is, and I understand that I will be discriminated against, and I understand that those doors will constantly be, some doors will constantly be slammed in my face because I am a young black man. But I think you have to see, you just have to believe in yourself and believe that you deserve it. You know, there's been many situations that there's been many times that I've had a job interview and I didn't necessarily get the job, but I felt that I should have got the job, and I felt that the reason why I didn't get the job was because of the color of my skin, but I didn't let those times, those moments to affect the way that I saw myself or affect the way that I saw my potential.
Okay. All right. If we had time, I want to circle back to that. But I want to kind of keep us on schedule here. Either of you, tell us about a story about what you were told about your place in society by your elders growing up.
So not so much when I was younger, maybe a few years ago. So my uncle, he's down in Virginia.
Okay.
And occasionally every summer we'll go down to see him, and he would, with me and my brothers and a couple of cousins, and he would sort of give us this almost like a summer camp, and his name was David Garnett, so he called it Camp David.
Camp David.
So we would teach us about like where you are as a black man and where people will see you as a black man, and sort of give us different tools and tips and things like how to go for a job interview, or talking about business and entrepreneurship. And he showed us a picture of two pictures side by side, where it was on one side, it's, you know, a black guy, shirt off, tattoos, pants sagging, underwear showing, head bandana, and then the caption was, "How they see you." And on the other side is, you know, a young black man in like a suit and tie, you know, neatly dressed,
Well
neatly
groomed.
yeah,
Got
right,
it.
and
Yeah.
how you should want to be seen. That other side is sort of showing you this is how America's probably going to see you initially. Like if you're walking down the street with a hoodie, and someone will see you and probably walk across the other street.
Walk across the street,
Right.
or try to make it their business and move as far away from you as possible.
Exactly.
I've experienced that many times.
Same.
All right.
Yeah, and sort of having that's the perception that's going to be out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to change that, you sort of have to not so much change yourself or change the perception, but sort of give off that this isn't all of us. Like, you don't have to be afraid of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of us are going to do something that you try to rob you or anything like that. Some of us actually are going forward in life and trying to make something of this life and live a positive life.
Mm-hmm.
So these sort of instilled in us that people are going to see you a certain way. Doesn't mean you have to buy into that. You still have a life of your own. You still have goals that you want to achieve, that you have to achieve as a black man.
Mm-hmm.
So I struggle with this a little bit, because I feel like one of the things that constantly happens to us, especially as black males, is that you have to learn how to navigate in two different worlds. And it frustrates me to no end. What do you think about that?
I think I know what you mean. So like talking to my mom on a regular basis, and then hear my mom talk on the phone, like on a work call. There's that different language.
Code switching.
Code switching. Right.
And I guess the question I have is, why do we feel like we have to constantly do that to navigate in this world? I know the answer to it, but it's like, why?
Right.
Why? So I throw it out there to both of you. Why?
Because I feel like some of us believe that being our true, authentic self isn't good enough. And so we're constantly trying to conform to the expectations that the dominant culture has for us because they don't think that our natural hairstyle is beautiful, so we would straighten it and do all we can to be quote unquote more professional. So I kind of feel like part of it, I mean, obviously the underlining reason why I understand that, but I also think I feel like a part of it has something to do with us because we don't believe that we are good enough, and so we try to conform to the ideology or to the ideology or to the vision that, well, this is what beauty looks like, or this is what professionalism looks like, or this is what it's supposed to be. This is what it's supposed to look like.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit because for some individuals, I do think it's this. They have the lack confidence, so they feel like you have to look a certain way to feel a certain way to be accepted, right? But then I think the other piece of that is we got to do some of that stuff to survive, right? There's certain things that I can't say in certain spaces because if I do, it's gonna get me in trouble. And if I get in trouble, then I'm in trouble at work. And if I'm in trouble at work, then that's my livelihood. And if my livelihood is affected, then my daughter's affected. So I'm always thinking about that in the back of my mind, but I'm also thinking about the line of work that I'm doing and who I'm doing it for. So if I can't go and be my authentic self and go, operate and maneuver in a different way sometimes, it messes with me internally. And it's hard to operate like that. So that's my thoughts on it. What are some other things that you wish you would have heard growing up? What do you wish you would have heard less of growing up?
I wish I would have heard less of the N-word.
In regards to the narrative, yeah.
I wish I would have heard less of in regards to the narrative. I wish I would have heard less of that black boys, black young men, black and brown skinned men are dangerous, are criminals, are thugs, are deadbeat fathers, are rapists, are all of that. I wish I would have heard less of that, and I wish I would have heard more of, black is beautiful, black is educated, black is determined, black is strong, black
kings.
can do. Yeah, black males are kings,
Queens.
and all of that. Yeah, I wish I would have heard more of that because for a long time I kind of, being honest, I mean, for a long time I used to think that black was ugly. I mean, also colorism plays a big part into that narrative as well. Growing up, on one side of the family, a lot of my family members are lighter skinned because we have a few people in our family who are biracial, I'll just say. And so growing up, I used to think that black was ugly because I was told that, okay, the darker your skin is, the uglier you are. Wow. And this is coming from my family. This is coming from people who look like me. And I always felt like they didn't really understand me because I was the darker one compared to the rest of them in my family. And so I just wish I would have heard more positive things regarding black people. I wish I would have knew about, prominent black figures. I wish I would have knew that I could be whatever I wanted to be, that I could be a doctor, that I can be a lawyer, that I could be a television host, that I can be a producer if I wanted to, but that belief wasn't instilled in me in my household because a lot of people in my family didn't go to school. A lot of them didn't even graduate high school, and the possibility of college wasn't even thought of,
Right.
So
that wasn't the expectation.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Dallas?
I think looking back, I wish I would have heard more of all of that what you were talking about. I don't think I really sort of recognized my own blackness until I was a little bit older. So like you said, knowing about black prominent figures and knowing the black is beautiful and that kind of thing, it all just kind of bypassed me, and I don't really remember having those kind of conversations growing up. I think I wish I would have like to hear more of that, just to have a more educational or knowledge or background of our history, that kind of thing. And I think it would have, I ended up in the spot that I am because of the things that I've learned over the past couple of years about the background and that kind of thing. But I think learning about it earlier and hearing more of that kind of stuff would really give me a proper, I guess, the right language to have this kind of conversation. So hearing more of that would have shaped me into even a more stronger, I guess, activist for what we're trying to accomplish or what we're trying to achieve.
So a lot of what you mentioned and some of what you mentioned is deep rooted. You do know that. And it's by design, and it was strategically done for a number of reasons. So when you talk about, being lighter skinned compared to being darker skinned, when, times of slavery, when our family was separated and we were working on the plantations, you noticed that
the light-skinned slave will be enslaved person will be in the household. The dark-skinned slave will be out there in the field working and all of that. And even when it comes to masculinity as well, although I'm not trying to get off subject.
Please, that's a whole nother Facebook Live conversation.
Okay.
But no, keep going.
I was going to say, and sometimes the slave owners would take the biggest, darkest field worker out there that was male, and they will rape him in front of the other slaves just to de-emasculate him, and just to show that sense of power, of authority over them,
Yeah, that's another Facebook Live conversation in and of it by itself right there. So there's not just one narrative, as you both described, regarding boys and men of color, right? So looking forward, and I think you guys are kind of getting there already for this next generation, and you guys are a generation after me, and then there's a generation after you, right? What should the next generation of men of color after you be told about their place in society? What role do you guys play in fostering what the message should be for our young people coming up?
I think part of that message has to be that it has to be done together. Like, I can't go out there and have my own project or my own activism, my own kind of thing, and then you have your own sort of thing, and we sort of meet in the middle. It has to be, we're both branched together, and then we both go out, like they say, each one teach one. I think it has, even though that's a good philosophy to go by, it has to be more than just one.
It does. I feel very strongly about that. It's almost more like each one teach five.
Exactly.
It's what it's got to be, but yeah. Go ahead.
I kind of would say that to stop waiting for someone to help you and to go out there and to really help yourself. Even with some of the work that I've done in my life and that I'm still continuing to try to do, I just started. I mean, I didn't have all the answers. Sometimes I didn't even know what I was doing, or I didn't know who to speak with exactly, but I just went out there, and because I had a thirst for knowledge, I had a thirst for trying to fix my community. So my advice to the upcoming generation would kind of be just to go out there and to do it, to make it happen. And then also kind of going back to what you two said,
Let me ask you this. What do you do when you don't know what to do? What do you do when you don't know how to go do whatever it is that you're trying to do? Where do you go?
I think in those moments, you need those moments of silence, of stillness. If you don't know what to do nothing until you can figure out what to do, And I kind of live by that philosophy because it kind of it has helped me. Whatever your belief system is, I believe in something greater than myself. And I feel like that power greater than me is constantly speaking to me. And it speaks to me in a language that I understand. It speaks to me through interactions with other people, through conversations. It speaks to me through experiences. Sometimes it can even speak to me through nature. It can be the simplest thing. It can be the TV turning on one day and you saw something on the news that can spark an idea, that can spark literally a movement. And so I felt like when you don't know what to do, remain silent and be still, and then the answer will come to you.
Okay.
I think there's something to that, sort of that staying. So if you're stuck in a situation where you're locked up, you freeze up, and it's sort of like fight or flight. You sort of freeze there and don't do anything, don't overreact. But there's also a point where if you don't know what to do and you do nothing, it's almost like the rest of the world, they just keep moving past you, because that's how we are now. It's just like that. Everything is moving forward. And if you're staying back and while everyone else is moving forward, then all of a sudden you're playing catch up again. Although there is something to staying still and finding that peace and stillness to find the right answer, there's also has to be some kind of movement, in a sense that you don't get left behind, even further behind that we already are in.
But see, that's why you should stay on your path and your track. You shouldn't be worrying about what the next person is doing. You know, you should be worrying about yourself. And I think those moments are very important, because if you don't know what to do, you know, you can figure it out. The answer will reveal itself. That's just what I believe so strongly. But I mean, I understand where you're coming from as well.
And then sometimes you need you need mentors and other folk to kind of help you figure it out.
To help guide you.
Because sometimes you got the
way,
pieces, but you need somebody else to kind of help you put it together, in a sense, right? Yeah. So at this time, I want to make sure that I invite, you know, our audience, viewers, anybody that is watching. If you have comments, please feel free to push them out. We would love to hear from you. So part of having Facebook Live conversations is to hear from the folk on Facebook. So if you're out there, you know, shoot us some questions. Young men of color, you guys, who do you look up to? Why?
I would say I look up to people who do a lot in the community.
Like who?
It's mostly athletes. So I like Curtis Granderson. Okay. One of my favorite athletes is Deion Sanders. And if you haven't seen his Hall of Fame speech, I watch it every single day. A few of the things he talks about is, if your dream isn't bigger than yourself, there's something wrong with your dream.
Okay.
And he also speaks about, so his nickname is Prime Time. And
Prime time. Yeah,
Prime is an acronym for promise, responsibility, intelligence, management, and expectation. And he said...
I think you just dropped some knowledge on some folk, because I think it's a lot of people that didn't know that.
Right. Right. So you have promise, you have responsibility, you have intelligence, and you have management, and then you have expectations. And he always said, expect to be great. Like start expecting what you desire, and it will come to you. You can't sort of sit back, like we were talking before. You can't expect that door to be locked, so I'm not going to go through that door. Expect that it'll work. Expect that you'll be in a higher spot. He expected himself to be in the Hall of Fame. So it's that kind of thing. Start expecting more than what you really desire.
It's not just that belief, though, but you also have to put the work into it. I look up to a lot of people, some in which you don't even know who I am. I look up to people like, I mean, it might sound cliche, this name, but Oprah Winfrey, of course, Oprah Winfrey, Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Bill Hooks, Maya Angelou, you, Tommy. I look up to my ancestors, the people that came before me, and the work that they did, and how they went after it, and they, with so much tenacity and belief and willpower, and how they didn't even know that a moment like this can even be possible, but they had that belief that if not for me, then for the people after me, that it's a possibility that, you know, things will get better.
Anyone locally here that you guys look up to? Buffalo?
I said you. You.
Get out of here, man.
Tommy. I mean, not really.
Okay. I was just wondering. I was curious.
Yeah.
You guys named some national folk and some folk I never even heard of before. So.
I like my mom. I look up to my mom a lot. Being a single parent, and I have 5 other siblings. So growing up in a house with all those people and seeing her manage all those things, I remember she would work 3 jobs, and we would be home alone at night, and I would be on the phone crying. And it was one night I'm soaked in fear about little things. So I called her because I couldn't sleep, and it was raining, and she was walking outside.
I'm gonna leave you alone on that one.
And her phone dropped in the rain, and like it was all muffled, and I just got really scared, like what just happened. But I also cry when like I get a paper cut. So it's those kind of things. But I look up to my mom and just how strong she is, and just seeing her go through life, and it puts not so much pressure, but it gives me that expectation that, all right, I need to fulfill the Taylor name.
As well, my mother and my grandmother, two strong Black women who helped raise me, and all the other women in my family who contribute to me being the young man that I am today. You know.
Why is that you look up to some of the individuals that you just mentioned, that you kind of rattled off? Give me the whys. I know you gave me the why behind Prime Time, and Dion, but you rattled off a lot of names, Malik. So give me some whys.
Mostly because those people understood the meaning of life, or what I believe that the meaning of life is. And I kind of feel like the meaning of life, the purpose of life, is to use your life to that of service to other people, to help other people, to uplift other people, and that kind of ties into legacy, because your legacy is every life that you have touched. It's every person that you have had a conversation with, and that person decided that they were going to stop doing drugs, or that they were going to get out of an abusive relationship, or that they were going to go back to school, or that they were going to be who they really want to be in the world, and start to do whatever it is that they want to do. So I mostly look up to those people for that. Those people that I mentioned, they've been through a lot. They endured a lot. They've learned from their experiences, and they use those gifts and those talents that they have to try to uplift everyone else.
Okay.
So
I can appreciate that. And, you know, I have individuals that I look up to as well. Nobody famous like you guys. Well, a couple famous folk, but I look up to those people for different reasons. So for me, it's the Tommy McClams of the world. It's the Lamar Mackey's, my barber, who been cutting my hair forever, and we had those barbershop type conversations. It's the Will Palmers, who took me under their wing when I was 13 and working in his record store under the table, and kind of kept me out of trouble, right? And countless other folk. But I mean, Tommy is like my centerpiece in a sense, because I mean, that dude seemed like he's been a mentor to like every young man in Buffalo. I know I'm exaggerating a bit, but he means so much to so many people, and just the way he approaches his relationships with young people. When we talk about mentoring, his approach to mentoring has always been, if I become your mentor, I'm your mentor for life. And I think that's the approach that we kind of have to have, especially, and I push that on you guys as young people, because, you know, Tommy won't be around forever. Daniel won't be around forever, right? So that 1 to 5 ratio, you guys really have to take that and run with it. And, you know, we're going to push you guys to do that.
yeah, you kind of make me want to cry a little bit, but
Don't
I ain't going to
start,
cry.
please don't.
Because
No,
as I think about my mother and my grandmother and the impact that they have had on my life, and like I mentioned before, two strong women, Black women, who have been through a lot, and who have gave up so much, and have gave up their dreams in life just to benefit me, just to make sure that I was okay, just to make sure that I have this chance and this opportunity right now, you know.
Well, I appreciate you guys. I feel like you brought some very intelligent conversation into the space today. I appreciate you for your viewpoints. I think we're going to get ready to wrap this thing up, but before we close out, I just want to let you guys give, if you could say something inspiring to anybody that's watching, what would it be? Like, just some takeaways.
I would say, to quote one of my favorite people in the world, Lisa Nichols, she's not a motivational coach, she's a transformational coach. She's here for your transformation. And one of her, a quote that resonates with me that she said was, to allow your light to shine as bright as it can possibly shine, because when you do that, you give others permission to do the same.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I think a lot when we talk about sort of the younger generation taking over, sort of the metaphor is, all right, it's time for us to take the mantle. I think it's time for us as the younger generation to sort of talk about changing the narrative. It's time for us to not only take the mantle, but take the pen. Like, all right, you've written the story enough. It's time for us now to start to write our own story. So I think my inspiration or inspirational quote would be to take the pen. It's time for us now to write our story, change what you've been writing, take the white out, all right, that's not right, and rewrite the whole thing, because at the end of the day, it's our story. We can't let anyone else dictate or write it for us. This is not a biography, it's an autobiography.
Let's go. Marathon, right?
Yes,
Not a
sir.
sprint.
What would you leave with everyone?
That's it. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Rest up, nip. Man, this has been very insightful. I could talk to y'all young brothers all night long, but unfortunately we can't. So with that, I want to thank you, Dallas. Thank you, Malik, for joining us, taking the time out today. And thanks to everyone that tuned in. All of the other conversations in this series about changing the narrative for young men of color. Thank you, WBFO. Continue to look on the Facebook page. WBFO is doing a lot of great work around, some of this conversation that we had today. With that, this series, of course, has been a part of WBFO's Racial Equity Project, which is funded by the Community Foundation for Greater Buffalo. Thank you again, and hopefully we hear from you guys, see you guys in the future. Peace.